My father uninvited me from his 60th birthday because he said I lacked the class to mingle with my brother-in-law's wealthy investors. He claimed he needed to keep standards high, but he forgot one detail. The silent partner funding half of that high standard was actually me. When I pulled my capital the next morning, I didn't just ruin the party, I reminded them that without my money, their precious standards were just empty noise. My name is Alice Lawson, and at 34 years old, I had learned that silence was the most expensive commodity in the world. I was currently enjoying a very specific kind of silence on the 42nd floor of the Marblegate Capital Partners building. It was the kind of silence that smelled of conditioned air, aged leather, and the faint, ozone hum of servers processing transactions that could buy entire city blocks. The city sprawled beneath me, a grid of gray and glass under the mid-afternoon sun. From this height, the traffic on the interstate looked like a sluggish stream of blood moving through an artery, but up here, everything was cool and detached. I was reviewing the quarterly yield on a distressed asset portfolio we had acquired 3 months ago. The numbers were good, better than good. Actually, we were looking at a 22% internal rate of return, which meant my bonus this year would likely exceed the total value of my parents' house. I reached for my coffee, black, no sugar, my eyes scanning the dual monitors. I was just about to authorize a wire transfer for $12 million to clear a bridge loan when my personal phone buzzed against the mahogany grain of my desk. The screen lit up. Mom. I hesitated. A call in the middle of a trading day was rare. My family usually assumed I was busy with what they called my administrative work. In their minds, I answered phones, filed papers, and perhaps made coffee for the men who actually made the decisions. They never asked for details, and over the years, I had stopped offering them. I slid my finger across the screen and brought the phone to my ear. Alice, are you there? My mother's voice was high, tight, carrying that specific frequency she used when she was trying to package bad news as a favor. I'm here, Mom, I said, keeping my voice level. I minimized the $12 million transfer window. Is everything okay? Is Dad all right? Oh, your father is fine. He is wonderful. Actually, better than wonderful. We are just so excited about the party this weekend. You know, the big 6-0. I leaned back in my Aeron chair. I know. I bought my ticket to fly in on Friday night. I was going to stay at the hotel downtown so I wouldn't crowd you guys. There was a pause on the other end of the line. It was a thick, heavy pause. I could hear her inhaling, preparing the narrative. Well, that is actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Sweetheart, she said. The plans have changed a little bit. We are not doing the dinner at the club anymore. Lauren and Gavin insisted we host it at their new place, the villa on the lake. You haven't seen it yet, have you? It is absolutely breathtaking. Gavin says the architecture is award-winning. That sounds nice, I said, feeling the first cold prickle of intuition at the base of my neck. I can just drive the rental car out to the lake then. It is only an hour from the airport. Alice, listen, she cut in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The thing is, the guest list has become a little complicated. Gavin is inviting some very heavy hitters, people from his firm, potential investors, men who run hedge funds and manage endowments. It is going to be a very high-pressure environment, a lot of shop talk, a lot of networking. I stared at my screen. I was looking at a spreadsheet detailing the leveraged buyout of a mid-sized logistics firm. I understood shop talk. I lived in shop talk. Okay, I said slowly. And we just think, she stammered slightly. We think you would be uncomfortable. Alice, you know how you get. You are quiet, and you do not really follow the markets. And these people, they can be very intense. They judge everything. What you wear, what you do for a living, where you summer. We just do not want you to feel out of place. It is going to be a room full of sharks. Honey, you are just not built for that. The words hung in the air, coated in a layer of sickening sweetness. She was protecting me. That was the lie she told herself. She was saving her poor administrative assistant daughter from the embarrassment of standing in a room full of masters of the universe. So, I said, my voice dry. "You are uninviting me. From Dad's 60th birthday." "Oh, do not use that word," she said quickly. "We are just curating the evening to make sure everyone has a good time. We thought maybe you could come by on Sunday morning, just the family. We can do a brunch. It will be much more intimate. You would prefer that, wouldn't you? No pressure to impress anyone?" I looked down at my hand. I was wearing a watch that cost more than Gavin's car. It was a vintage piece. Subtle. The kind of thing only another collector would notice. "Does Dad know you are making this call?" I asked. "Your father agrees with me. Alice, we just want the evening to go perfectly. For Gavin's sake, too. This is a big opportunity for him to secure capital for his fund. We have to support the family success stories, right? The family success stories. Lauren, the trophy wife with the perfect bob cut. Gavin, the loud-mouthed private equity manager who used buzzwords he barely understood. "I see," I said. "Sunday brunch? Sure." "You are so understanding. Sweetheart, I knew you would be relieved. I will tell your father everything is settled." She hung up before I could say another word. The silence rushed back into my office, but now it felt different. It felt sharp. I hadn't even set the phone down before it buzzed again. This time, the ID read Dad. I answered immediately. "Hello, Dad? Your mother tells me she spoke to you." His voice boomed. He didn't do the sweet, apologetic dance my mother did. He was a man who believed in chain of command, even if he had never commanded anything more significant than a mid-level insurance branch. "I want to make sure we are clear, Alice. We are clear," I said. "I am not coming to the party." "It is for the best," he said, his tone gruff. "Look, Gavin has put a lot of work into this night. He is bringing in men who manage hundreds of millions of dollars. Serious money. We have to keep the standards high. Appearance is everything in that world. You understand that, right? We cannot have any loose ends. We cannot have anyone asking awkward questions about why you are still single or why you are working a desk job at 34. It distracts from the image Gavin is building." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a reflex, a biological reaction to absurdity. "I would hate to lower the standards, Dad," I said. "Exactly," he said, missing the irony completely. "This is Gavin's night to shine. And frankly, it is my night to enjoy the fruits of what this family has achieved. Lauren married well. She secured a future. We need to respect that. You come Sunday. We will have pancakes. It will be nice." "Sunday," I repeated. "Got it. Good girl. See you then." The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone to the desk. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the panoramic view of the skyline. They thought they were sparing me. They thought they were keeping the help out of the boardroom so the adults could talk business. They thought I was the loose end, the smudge on the lens of their perfect, high society portrait. My father's words echoed in my head. Men who manage hundreds of millions of dollars. Serious money. I swiveled my chair toward the main monitor. The anger didn't feel hot. It didn't make me want to scream or throw the heavy crystal paperweight across the room. It felt like ice water in my veins. It clarified things. It stripped away the last lingering threads of guilt I had felt about keeping my life separate from theirs. I had spent 10 years building a fortress around my career. I started as an analyst, worked 80-hour weeks until my eyes bled, and clawed my way up to partner at Marblegate before I turned 32. I managed a portfolio worth $400 million. My personal net worth was a number my father wouldn't even know how to contextualize without thinking I had done something illegal. But to them, I was just Alice. Alice the quiet one. Alice the failure. Alice who rented a small apartment because I was never there and preferred hotels and drove a modest sedan because I hired drivers when I needed to go anywhere important. I exhaled a long breath and placed my hands on the keyboard. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's check the standards." I opened the internal portfolio management system. The software hummed to life, a dark interface populated by streams of neon data. I navigated to the Holdings tab, the section that tracked our diversifications and the smaller, High-risk, high-reward bets we place through shell companies to keep our strategies opaque. I typed in a search query. Stonewick. The results populated instantly. Stonewick Growth Partners. 2 LP stake. There it was. Gavin's pride and joy. His mid-market growth fund. Gavin liked to brag at Thanksgiving dinners about his institutional backing. He loved to drop hints that he had attracted the attention of quiet giants in the industry. He would swirl his scotch and tell my father that the big boys trusted him because he had the vision. He had no idea that the quiet giant was his sister-in-law. 2 years ago, one of my junior analysts had brought the Stonewick prospectus to my desk. The fundamentals were shaky, and the management fees were too high. But the underlying sector exposure, tech-enabled logistics in the Midwest, fit a very specific hedging strategy I was building. I had approved the investment, but I had done it through Harborline Ventures, LLC, a blind special-purpose vehicle we used for deals where we didn't want the Marblegate name driving up the price. I clicked on the line item. The details expanded. Harborline Ventures, LLC, commitment, $4 million, called capital. $3.2 million. Status active anchor, LP. I stared at the numbers. $4 million to Marblegate. It was a rounding error, a slightly large bet on a Tuesday afternoon. To Gavin and Stonewick Growth Partners. It was life support. I knew Gavin's fund structure. It was small, roughly $40 million in total commitments. A $4 million anchor ticket wasn't just 10% of the fund. It was the signal of legitimacy. It was the money that convinced the other sheep to follow the shepherd. If the anchor dropped, the boat didn't just drift. It capsized. My father wanted to keep standards high. He wanted to ensure that the people in that room, the heavy hitters, saw only success. He wanted to protect the image of wealth and power that Gavin projected. I looked at the date on the screen. The fund was currently in a lockup period, meaning investors couldn't easily redeem their capital. That was standard. But I knew the limited partnership agreement, the LPA, better than Gavin did. I had written the addendum myself, forcing his desperate lawyers to accept it 2 years ago because they needed the cash so badly. I opened the document repository and pulled up the executed contract. I scrolled past the boilerplate legal jargon, past the fee structures, down to Article 14, Section 3, Keyman Clause and Reputational Risk/Good Faith Provision. It was a beautiful, razor-sharp paragraph. It allowed the limited partner me to trigger an immediate withdrawal of capital if the general partner Gavin engaged in conduct that could be deemed misrepresentative of the fund's stability, or if there was a material breach of professional transparency. I thought about the birthday party. I thought about the important guests Gavin was trying to woo. I thought about how he was likely using the stability of his current investor base, specifically the institutional backing of Harborline Ventures, as the bait to hook these new fish. If he was telling them that his anchor capital was secure while simultaneously treating the person who controlled that capital like a servant. That wasn't just irony. It was a blind spot the size of the Grand Canyon. I picked up my office phone and dialed a 4-digit extension. "Ethan," I said when my portfolio manager picked up. "Hey, boss," Ethan Reeves answered. "I was just looking at the crude oil futures. Do you want to—" "Forget the oil," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly steady. "Pull up the Stonewick file, the Harborline stake." I heard the rapid clicking of a mechanical keyboard on the other end. Stonewick. The Gavin Holt Fund. I thought that was a passive hold until maturity. It is performing okay, mediocre, but okay. It is not a passive hold anymore, I said. I want you to prepare a redemption notice. There was a silence on the line. A redemption, Alice. We are mid-cycle. They will fight us on the lockup terms. It could get messy. We have cause, I said. Look at the addendum. And I don't just want a redemption. I want a full inquiry into their current liquidity. If they are hosting a gala to raise new funds, they are legally required to disclose any pending withdrawals from major LPs. I want that notice delivered today, before close of business. Alice, Ethan said, his voice dropping. If we pull $4 million out of a fund that size on a Tuesday afternoon with no warning, we are going to kill them. I mean, we are going to trigger a run on the bank. If the other LPS see Harborline walking, they will panic. You are talking about nuking the guy's reputation." I looked out the window again. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long, sharp shadows across the skyscrapers. I imagined the villa on the lake. I imagined my mother fussing over the napkins. I imagined my father swelling with pride as he shook hands with men he thought were his peers, unaware that the only reason they were there was because of a check signed by the daughter he had just told to stay away. They said I wasn't sophisticated enough for the room. "Ethan," I said softly. "What?" "Nothing," I said, my tone hardening back into steel. "Just send the notice, and send a copy to their auditor. I want to make sure the standards remain high." "Understood," Ethan said. "Drafting it now. It will be in your inbox in 10 minutes. I hung up the phone. My father was right about one thing. Standards were important. Integrity was important. And the most important standard in my world was simple. You do not bite the hand that feeds you, especially if you are too arrogant to realize whose hand it is. I looked at the reflection of my face in the dark glass of the window. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like the sad single daughter who wasn't invited to the ball. I looked like a portfolio manager who had just identified a toxic asset and was cutting it loose. "If they are afraid, I will lower the standards," I said to the empty room, my finger hovering over the mouse, ready to sign the digital execution order that would appear in moments. "Then I will show them where the standard actually lies." I waited for the email ping. It arrived 3 minutes later. Subject notice of withdrawal/urgent/Stonewick Growth Partners. I opened it, I read it, and then, with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet office, I signed it. The digital signature on the screen was still fading from bold to regular font, confirming the execution, but my mind was already drifting backward. It was a habit I had developed early in my career. When you make a decision that destroys something, you have to be absolutely certain you understand the architecture of what you are demolishing. You have to know the structural weaknesses better than the builder did, and I knew the architecture of my family perfectly. For as long as I could remember, the Lawson family narrative had been a play with 2 acts. Act 1 was Lauren. Lauren was the sun around which my parents orbited. She had the cheerleading trophies, the degree from the university that everyone recognized by name, and the wedding that cost more than the down payment on my first apartment. She was the definition of success that my mother could print on a Christmas card. She was visible. She was loud. She was correct. Act 2 was Alice. Alice was the footnote. I swiveled my chair away from the monitors, staring at the abstract painting on the far wall. It was a genuine Rothko, a dark, brooding block of color that I had bought at auction 3 years ago for $2.6 million. My mother had seen a photo of it on my phone once. She had squinted, patted my hand, and told me that maybe if I saved up, I could buy some nice prints from the home goods store to brighten up my rental. They had constructed an entire fictional life for me, brick by brick, based solely on their own insecurities, because I didn't talk about my work. They assumed my work was menial, because I didn't flash designer logos. They assumed I couldn't afford them, because I lived alone and prioritized my privacy. They assumed I was lonely and struggling. It was a fascinating psychological projection. They needed me to be the failure. If I was the failure who just did administrative work and lived in a cramped little apartment, then Lauren's frantic, image-obsessed life looked stable by comparison. My mediocrity was the mortar that held their self-esteem together. I remembered a lunch 2 years ago. I had just closed the biggest deal of my life, a merger that reshaped the pharmaceutical supply chain in the Northeast. I was buzzing with adrenaline, carrying a check in my bag that could have bought my parents' entire neighborhood. I had met them at a mid-range Italian restaurant, thinking, foolishly, that maybe I would tell them, maybe I would finally drop the curtain. But before I could even open the menu, my father had slid a $20 bill across the table toward me. "For gas, Alice," he had said, his voice loud enough for the waiter to hear. "We know things are tight with the rent going up, Don't be too proud to take it. I had stared at that $20. It wasn't a gift. It was a leash. It was a reminder of my place in the hierarchy. If I had told them the truth right then that I had just earned 8 figures in a single quarter, it wouldn't have been a celebration. It would have been an insult. It would have shattered the world they understood. So I took the $20. I said thank you. I let them keep their world. And then there was Gavin. If Lauren was the sun, Gavin was the mirror she used to admire herself. He was handsome in a generic, catalog model way, with a handshake that was always slightly too firm, as if he were trying to crush your skepticism physically. He spoke in buzzwords. He talked about synergy and alpha and high net worth ecosystems, with the confidence of a man who had read the summaries of business books, but never the actual chapters. But it was his eyes that I despised. Gavin possessed a predatory gaze. When he entered a room, he didn't look at people. He appraised them. He scanned wrists for watches, scanned feet for shoes, scanned lapels for cuts. He had a mental calculator running behind his eyes, assigning a dollar value to every human interaction. I was always valued at 0. I remembered the text Lauren had sent me before their housewarming party last year. It was the moment I stopped trying to be a sister and started observing them like a sociologist. Alice, maybe sit this one out, she had written. Gavin invites a very specific crowd. People from the club, high energy. I don't want you to feel awkward because you don't really get that vibe. It is a status thing. You know, just looking out for you. I didn't get the vibe. That was Rich. I practically invented the vibe. The people Gavin was so desperate to impress the bankers, the fund managers, the heavy hitters, were the same people who sat in my waiting room hoping for 15 minutes of my time. They were the people who sent me gift baskets during the holidays, hoping I wouldn't call in their loans. But I never told her that. I never told any of them. I had built Marblegate from a laptop on a kitchen table, trading with money I had saved from waitressing, compounding it through sheer mathematical aggression until I had enough leverage to start buying companies. I did it in silence because I wanted to know one thing: who would love Alice Lawson if Alice Lawson had nothing. The answer, as confirmed by the phone call regarding my father's birthday, was nobody. I leaned forward and tapped the intercom button on my desk again. My finger lingered on the plastic. "Ethan," I said, "are you still there?" "I am here," Ethan's voice came back, sounding slightly breathless. "I am pulling the full Stonewick diligence file now. The redemption notice is drafted. But Alice, are you sure you want to go nuclear? I am looking at their investor updates. They are in the middle of a roadshow for Fund 3. "I know," I said. "That is why we are doing it." "It is brutal timing," Ethan said. "If you pull the anchor capital now, the questions won't stop at liquidity. The other LPs will assume you found fraud. You are not just closing an account. You are lighting a signal flare that says, 'This ship is sinking.' Open the file." "Ethan," I commanded, my voice flat. "Look at the initial diligence notes, the ones from 3 years ago. Why did we invest?" I could hear him typing. "Okay, let's see. Manager profile strategy. Here it is. Analyst note. Principal Gavin Holt is inexperienced and over-leveraged on ego, but the sector data is pristine. The underlying assets in the Midwest logistics corridor are undervalued by 30%. We are betting on the trucks, not the jockey." I closed my eyes. Betting on the trucks, not the jockey. It was my one violation of my own cardinal rule. I never invested in people I didn't respect. Character was a leading indicator of performance. Arrogant men usually made catastrophic errors because they refused to believe they could be wrong. But the numbers for Stonewick had been so clean, so perfect for the hedging strategy I needed at the time, that I had held my nose and signed the check. I had used a blind LLC, Harborline Ventures, precisely because I didn't want Gavin to know. I didn't want the awkwardness at Thanksgiving. I didn't want him pitching me ideas over turkey. I wanted the investment to be purely mathematical. But now, the math had changed. The variable of family obligation had been removed from the equation. "Alice," Ethan said, his voice changing pitch. "I found something else, in the side letter." "Tell me," I said. It is the clawback provision regarding the key man insurance, Ethan said, and I could practically hear him wincing. It is a standard clause, but the wording here is aggressive. If the anchor investor, that is us, withdraws due to loss of faith in management integrity, we have the right to demand an immediate third-party audit of all management fees paid to date to ensure our capital wasn't used for operational overhead outside of the fund's mandate. I sat up straight. I remembered that clause. I had insisted on it because Gavin's lifestyle had seemed suspiciously lavish for a first-time fund manager. And, Ethan continued, if we trigger that audit, it freezes their ability to call capital from any other investor until the audit is complete. It basically paralyzes the fund for 60 days. 60 days. Gavin's birthday party for Dad was in 4 days. He was planning to use that event to close his new investors. He needed to look powerful. He needed to look liquid. He needed to look like a kingmaker. If I triggered this clause, on the morning of the party, his accounts would be frozen. He wouldn't be able to pay the caterers. He wouldn't be able to show his new investors a clean balance sheet. He would be standing in a room full of sharks with a bleeding wound. Do it, I said. Alice, Ethan warned. This is going to destroy him. I mean, personally, if the audit finds even one expense report that is off like a family dinner charged to the fund, or a vacation expensed as a business trip he is looking at SEC violations, he could lose his license. I looked at the phone. I thought about my father's voice telling me not to lower the standards. I thought about my mother telling me I wouldn't be comfortable. I thought about Gavin scanning the room, deciding who was worth his time and who wasn't. They wanted standards. They wanted high-class behavior. Well, there was nothing more high-class than strict financial compliance. He uninvited me from a birthday party to protect his image, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He wanted to keep the circle tight. I am just helping him tighten it. I don't follow, Ethan said. It doesn't matter, I replied. Trigger the clause, demand the audit, and Ethan, yeah. Make sure the notification is delivered by courier, a physical letter. I want it to arrive at his office tomorrow morning. I want him to hold the paper in his hands. Copy that, Ethan said. Harborline Ventures is officially going to war. I disconnected the call. The office was quiet again, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was charged. It was the heavy, static-filled air before a lightning strike. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. My reflection ghosted against the glass, superimposed over the city lights that were starting to flicker on in the twilight. I didn't see the administrative assistant my family saw. I saw a woman who controlled the weather. They had spent 30 years telling me I was small. They had spent a lifetime making me feel like I was taking up space I didn't deserve. They thought my silence was submission. They were about to learn the difference between silence and the deep breath before the plunge. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Lauren. Hope you are not too upset about the party. Honestly, it is going to be super boring anyway. Just business talk. You are lucky to miss it. I looked at the message. I didn't type a reply. I just deleted the thread. I'm not missing it. Lauren, I said to the glass. I am the event. I turned back to my desk. I had work to do. If I was going to dismantle my brother-in-law's life, I needed to make sure my own portfolio was bulletproof. After all, when the dust settled, I would be the only one left standing to pay the bill. The email notification I had just triggered sat in my outbox, hovering in that digital limbo between intent and irreversible action. Before the server could fully process the command, the intercom on my desk buzzed again. It was Ethan. The red light on the console blinked with a frantic urgency that I rarely saw from him. Alice, hold on. Ethan's voice cracked through the speaker, stripping away the professional veneer he usually maintained. Do not let that document release to the external custodian yet. We need to talk about the timeline. I am looking at the liquidity provisions in the main limited partnership agreement right now, and we have a mechanical problem. I pressed the button, leaning forward. What kind of problem? Ethan, I thought we agreed the cause was sufficient. The cause is sufficient, but the mechanism is slow, he explained. the sound of rustling papers echoing in the background. I am reading Article 11, Standard Redemption for a Limited Partner. Even an anchor like Harborline requires a 90-day notice period. If we file this as a standard withdrawal, Gavin does not have to pay us out for 3 months. He can hold the cash. He can still host his party this weekend. He can still flash our commitment letter to his new investors and claim everything is stable. We would be firing a gun that does not make a sound until next quarter. I frowned. 90 days. In 90 days, the birthday party would be a memory. The standards my father was so obsessed with would have been upheld. Gavin would have secured his new funding using my money as his foundation, and I would just be a minor administrative headache down the road. That was not acceptable. I do not have 90 days. Ethan, I said, my voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze oxygen. I want the capital out, now. I want the liquidity crisis to hit his balance sheet before the weekend. Then we have to escalate, Ethan said. We cannot use the standard withdrawal form. We have to invoke the bad boy carve-out in the side letter. It is the nuclear option I mentioned earlier. But to use it, we need to prove active misrepresentation. We need to prove he is currently acting in bad faith. I swiveled my chair, looking at the city skyline again. Define bad faith in this context. If he is using the Harborline name or the stability of our stake to solicit new money while simultaneously knowing that his relationship with the principal you is compromised, that is material misrepresentation. Ethan said, but it is tricky. Alice, we are an anonymous LLC. He does not know Harborline is you, so technically, he does not know the relationship is compromised. I tapped my fingers on the desk. That was the double-edged sword of my anonymity. I had hidden so well that I had protected him from the consequences of his own rudeness. He knows he uninvited his sister-in-law, I said. He knows he insulted the family member he thinks is a failure. He just does not know that failure is his bank. Exactly, Ethan said. So, unless we can find proof that he is misusing the Harborline credibility specifically, we might be stuck with the 90-day wait. I closed my eyes. Thinking about Gavin's habits, Gavin was lazy. He was the type of man who reused slide decks. He was the type of man who name-dropped. He was the type of man who, when cornered, would exaggerate his safety net to look invincible. Ethan, I said, go into the data room. Pull up the pitch deck he sent to the prospective investors for this weekend. The one he is presenting at the gala. I have it, Ethan said. I accessed it through the investor portal this morning. Control F for backing, I commanded, or institutional support. Tell me exactly how he phrases his relationship with his anchor limited partner. There was a moment of silence, filled only by the rapid-fire clatter of Ethan's keyboard. I waited. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, then 20. Got it? Ethan said. Slide 12. Capital structure and stability. He has a bullet point here. It says, Anchor institutional backing continues with full commitment for Fund 3, and there is a footnote. Primary LP has confirmed strategic alignment for long-term growth. I felt a sharp, cold laugh bubble up in my chest. Confirmed strategic alignment, I repeated. I haven't spoken to him about business in 2 years, and full commitment. We haven't signed anything for Fund 3. That is a lie, Ethan said, his voice hardening. That is a straight-up fabrication. If he is showing this to new money, he is selling them a guarantee that does not exist. Is that enough for the immediate breach clause? I asked. It is more than enough, Ethan said. It is fraud. If we flag this to the auditor, the 90-day lockup vanishes. The contract states that in the event of material misrepresentation in fundraising materials, all existing limited partners have the right to immediate redemption to protect their fiduciary interests. Then change the letter, I said. Do not just request a withdrawal. Cite the specific misrepresentation on slide 12, attach the slide as Exhibit A, and Ethan, yes. Add 2 more demands. 1, I want a full, updated audit of all management fees to ensure no other funds have been misappropriated for this marketing gala, and 2, I want a formal, Written confirmation of exactly which investors he has shown that slide to. We have a duty to correct the record. Alice, Ethan said, and this time, the warning in his voice was heavy. You know what happens if we send this version, right? This is not just pulling money. This is pulling the pin on a grenade in a crowded room. As soon as the auditor sees the word misrepresentation, they have a legal obligation to freeze the fund's operations. They will have to notify the other limited partners that a material dispute is in progress. I know, I said. The other investors will smell blood, he continued. You know how this herd works. If the anchor investor says the manager's a liar, everyone runs for the exit. You are going to trigger a bank run on Stonewick. His reputation won't just be damaged, it will be vaporized. He will never raise $1 in this town again. I thought about the phone call with my mother. You would be uncomfortable. Alice, they are heavy hitters. I thought about my father. Don't lower the standards. They wanted to play in the big leagues. They wanted the prestige of high finance. Well, this was the reality of high finance. It wasn't galas and champagne. It was compliance, accuracy, and the brutal punishment of errors. Gavin had made an error. He had assumed that his standards could be built on lies. It is a change in portfolio strategy, I said calmly. That is all. Proceed. Okay, Ethan said, sounding resigned. I am updating the notice now, referencing the breach of good faith, attaching the slide, demanding the immediate return of capital. It is ready for your signature. A new window popped up on my screen. The document was longer this time. The language was denser, more aggressive. It didn't read like a business letter anymore. It read like an indictment. I scrolled to the bottom. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about the family brunches I would be excluded from. I didn't think about the awkward Christmases. Those bridges were already burning. I was just pouring gasoline on the wet wood to make sure they finished the job. I typed my authentication code. I clicked sign. Done, I said. Received, Ethan replied. It is going out to the fund administrator, the auditor, and Gavin's compliance officer. Delivery in 3, 2, 1 cent. Thank you. Ethan, go home. Get some rest. You too. Boss, he said. And good luck. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, the silence of the office returning. But it felt different now. The tension was gone. The missile was in the air. There was nothing left to do but wait for impact. I turned back to my work. I had a merger model to finish for a client in the renewable energy sector. I opened the spreadsheet, adjusted the discount rate, and began typing. My fingers moved rhythmically across the keys. I was perfectly focused. I was completely calm. Outside, the sun went down. The city turned into a glittering grid of electric light. Cleaners moved through the hallway, the soft whir of their vacuums drifting under my door. I worked for another 2 hours, finalizing the valuation, checking the sensitivity analysis. It was just another Tuesday. Then, at 6:45, my personal phone lit up. It started with a single vibration, then another, then a continuous, angry buzz that rattled against the wood of my desk. Mom calling. I let it ring. It stopped, then started again immediately. Dad calling. I continued typing. I was correcting a formula in cell G45. It was important to get the tax implications right. The phone stopped. A message notification popped up. Lauren Alice. Pick up the phone. Mom is freaking out. Gavin is yelling at everyone. What is going on? I didn't look at the message. I simply flipped the phone face down. Another call. Gavin Holt. He never called me. In the 5 years he had been married to my sister. He had called me exactly twice, once to ask if I knew a good realtor, and once to ask if I could help out with a shared anniversary gift for my parents, because he was illiquid that month. Now, he was calling 3 times in a row. I could imagine the scene at the villa. The notification from the auditor would have landed in his inbox about an hour ago. He would have been sipping a pre-dinner drink, perhaps bragging to my father about the RSVP list for the gala. Then his phone would have pinged. He would have opened the email, expecting a routine confirmation. Instead, he would have seen the letterhead of Harborline Ventures. He would have seen the words, immediate redemption and material misrepresentation. He would have seen his own slide deck attached as evidence of fraud. He wouldn't know it was me yet. The LLC shielded my identity, but he would know that his biggest investor had just pulled the rug out from under him, and he would be scrambling to find out why. He would be calling everyone he knew, trying to stop the bleeding. The phone buzzed again. "Dad, I saved my spreadsheet." I closed the laptop. I stood up and put on my coat. Wrapping the wool tight against the air conditioning, I picked up my bag. I looked at the phone one last time. The screen was glowing with missed calls and frantic texts. The panic was radiating from the device like heat. Delivery confirmed. I walked to the elevator, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The sound was sharp, rhythmic, and solitary. I pressed the button for the lobby. "The party has started," I said softly to the empty corridor, and I stepped into the elevator, leaving the chaos 42 floors above me. Sealed inside a device I wouldn't answer. The next morning, the fallout didn't arrive with a bang, but with the relentless vibration of my phone against the glass surface of my desk. It was a persistent, insect-like buzzing that seemed determined to drill through the mahogany. I was sitting in my corner office, a fresh cup of espresso steaming to my right, reviewing the pre-market movers for the Asian exchanges. The morning sun was cutting through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air conditioning, creating a serene atmosphere that was completely at odds with the digital chaos unfolding on my handheld device. I finally glanced down. The notifications were stacking up like cars in a pileup. "Lauren, Alice, what the hell is going on? Gavin is losing his mind. He says an investor pulled the plug. He's throwing things in the kitchen. Did you know about this, Lauren? He says the signature on the withdrawal notice is yours. Alice, please tell me this is a mistake. You are going to give him a heart attack. Mom, your sister just called me in tears. Gavin is saying you are trying to ruin us. I do not understand what is happening. But you need to fix it. Immediately. Family is family. Alice, we do not do this to each other." I swiped the notifications away without opening the messages. My mother's definition of family was convenient. It was a shield when they needed protection, and a sword when they wanted to cut me down. Yesterday, I wasn't family enough to eat cake at a birthday party. Today, I was family enough to be required to save my brother-in-law's career. I turned my attention to my work email. There, nestled among market reports and internal memos, was a message from Gavin Holt, managing partner, Stonewick Growth. It was addressed to Harborline Ventures, LLC, but the subject line was marked urgent/personal/confidential. I opened it. The tone was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive corporate panic. "To the managing partners of Harborline, we are in receipt of your sudden notice of redemption. We believe this action is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of our current liquidity position and marketing materials. We urge you to reconsider this aggressive stance immediately, as a withdrawal of this magnitude outside of the standard 90-day window constitutes a breach of the spirit of our partnership. Furthermore, any attempt to disparage the fund to other limited partners will be met with vigorous legal defense. Please contact me personally to resolve this clerical error. Best, Gavin." He was terrified. The clerical error line was his desperate hope that the signature he saw Alice Lawson was a different Alice Lawson, or a mistake, or a hallucination. He was trying to bully a faceless institution, not realizing he was talking to the woman he had dismissed as a receptionist. I pressed the intercom button. "Sarah?" I said. My executive assistant picked up instantly. "Yes, Ms. Lawson. I am going to be receiving a high volume of personal calls today. My parents, my sister, and a man named Gavin Holt. I am not in the office for them. Block the numbers on the main switchboard. If they call your line, take a message and delete it." "Understood," Sarah said, her voice crisp. She didn't ask why. She was paid $120,000 a year to manage my time. Not my drama. "Oh, and Ms. Lawson Security just pinged me from the lobby." I frowned. "Who is it?" "It is a Mr. Frank Lawson. He says he is your father. He claims it is an emergency, and he is demanding to be sent up without a pass. I froze. My father had never visited my office. In the 10 years I had worked in finance, he had never once asked where the building was. He knew I worked downtown, but he had never cared to know the address. He must have looked it up this morning. Or perhaps Gavin had screamed it at him while tearing apart his kitchen. "He is making quite a scene at the front desk," Sarah added, her voice lowering slightly. "The guards are asking if they should escort him out." I leaned back in my chair, looking at the heavy glass doors of my office. I looked at the abstract expressionist painting on the wall. I looked at the view of the harbor, where the ships were moving slow and heavy in the water. My father wanted to see where I worked. He wanted to confront the administrative assistant who had dared to touch the family golden boy. "No," I said slowly. "Let him up. Send him straight to my office." "Are you sure?" "I am sure. I think it is time he saw the workspace." I spent the next 5 minutes waiting. I didn't tidy up. I didn't hide the sensitive documents on my desk. I sat there, centered, breathing in the cool, filtered air. Then, the heavy oak doors to the outer suite opened. I watched through the glass wall of my inner office as Sarah stood up to greet him. My father walked in. He was wearing his serious jacket, a tan windbreaker he usually reserved for arguing with mechanics or town council meetings. He looked red-faced, his shoulders hunched in that bullish posture he used when he was ready to shout someone down. But as he stepped past Sarah's desk and into the main corridor of the executive wing, his step faltered. He looked around. He looked at the vaulted ceilings. He looked at the floor, which was made of imported Italian marble. He looked at the row of junior analysts in the glass-walled bullpens, young men and women in tailored suits staring intensely at Bloomberg terminals, speaking in hushed, rapid-fire codes about yield curves and sovereign debt. This wasn't a back-office processing center. This wasn't a place where people filed papers and answered phones. This was a cathedral of capital. He stopped in front of my door. He saw my nameplate. It didn't say Alice Lawson. Admin. It was a simple, brushed steel plaque, Alice Lawson, senior partner. I pressed the button under my desk that released the magnetic lock on the glass door. It clicked open with a heavy, expensive sound. "Come in, Dad," I said. My voice didn't echo. The acoustics in the room were designed to absorb sound, keeping conversations private. He stepped inside. The door swung shut behind him, sealing us in. He stood there for a long moment, clutching his car keys in one hand. He looked at the Rothko painting. He looked at the view that stretched all the way to the horizon. He looked at me, sitting behind a desk that was larger than his dining table. "What is this?" he asked. His voice was smaller than I expected. The bluster had been sucked out of him by the sheer weight of the wealth surrounding us. "It is my office," I said calmly. "Would you like a water sparkling, or still?" He ignored the offer. He walked closer, his eyes darting around as if he were looking for the trick, as if he were looking for the real boss to walk in and kick me out of the chair. "You told us you did administrative work," he stammered. "I do," I replied, keeping my face impassive. "I administer a portfolio of $400 million. It is a lot of paperwork." It was the same phrase I had used for years to deflect their condescension. "I just do admin." Now, hearing it in this room, the words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. He gripped the back of one of the guest chairs, his knuckles turning white. He seemed to be struggling to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew, the one he had uninvited from a party to keep standards high, with the woman sitting before him in a suit that cost more than his car. Then, the anger returned. It was his safety mechanism. When he was confused, he got angry. "Gavin called me," he said, his voice rising. "He said you sent a letter. He said you are trying to bankrupt him." "I sent a redemption notice," I corrected. "It is a standard procedure when an investment no longer fits our risk profile." "Risk profile," he sputtered. "This is your brother-in-law. This is family. He said you pulled $4 million out of his fund this morning. $4 million. Alice. Where did you even get that kind of money? He looked at me with genuine bewilderment. In his mind, $4 million was a lottery win. It was a mythical sum. The idea that I had access to it, that I could move it with a signature, was breaking his reality. I earned it, I said, and I invested it, and now I am uninvesting it. You are Harbor Line, he whispered. Harbor Line Ventures is a special purpose vehicle I control. I said, I was the anchor investor for Gavin's fund. I was the institutional backing he has been bragging about for 2 years. My father sank into the chair. He didn't sit. He collapsed. He looked deflated. The windbreaker seemed too big for him suddenly. You knew, he said. You knew all this time, when he was talking about his big deals at dinner, when he was lecturing you about ambition. I knew, I said. I listened. I nodded. I paid the check. Then why, he asked, why do this now? Why ruin him 3 days before the party? You set the rules, Dad, I said, leaning forward, resting my elbows on the desk. You called me yesterday. You told me I wasn't sophisticated enough for the room. You told me I would lower the standards. You told me Gavin needed to impress the people who matter. I paused, letting the silence stretch. I am the people who matter, I said softly. He flinched. So I am removing myself, I continued. I am taking my unsophisticated, low-standard money, and I am going home. Isn't that what you wanted? You didn't want me at the table. It was a party. Alice, he shouted, slamming his hand on the armrest. It was just a birthday party. You are destroying his livelihood over a dinner invitation. It wasn't just a party, I said, my voice turning hard. It was a statement. You told me I wasn't good enough. You looked at me, your daughter, and you decided I was a blemish on your picture-perfect life. You chose Gavin's vanity over my dignity. We were trying to protect you. No, I cut him off. You were protecting a lie. You think Gavin is a success because he talks loud and spends money. You think I am a failure because I'm quiet and save it. Well, the lie is over. Gavin committed fraud. He lied to his investors. He used my name, my capital, to sell a security he couldn't back up. I didn't ruin him. Dad, I just turned on the lights. He stared at me. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. He wasn't looking at his child anymore. He was looking at a stranger who held a weapon he didn't understand. He tried to pivot. He tried to summon the patriarch. He sat up straighter, clearing his throat. Alice, he said, his voice taking on that familiar, lecturing tone. I am your father. I am telling you to stop this. You call your office or whoever handles this and you put the money back. You apologize to Gavin. You fix this mess. Right now. Do you hear me? It was a command. It was the voice that had sent me to my room when I was 10. It was the voice that had told me to take the $20 for gas. I looked at him. I felt absolutely nothing. No fear, no desire to please. Just a cold, clinical observation of a man who had lost his leverage. I reached for my mouse and woke up my computer screen. I can't do that, I said. What do you mean you can't? I am telling you to. I am a fiduciary, Dad, I said. I have a legal responsibility to protect my capital. Putting money back into a fund that is under audit for fraud would be negligence. I would lose my license. Audit, he paled. Yes, the auditors are already at his office. That is probably why he isn't answering your calls. My father stood up. He was shaking. You are cold. Alice, I never knew you were this cold. I am not cold, I said. I am professional. You wanted standards. This is the standard. If you want to play with the big boys, you have to follow the rules. He looked at the door, then back at me. He looked like he wanted to scream, to hit something, to force the world back into the shape he recognized. But the marble, the glass, the quiet humming of the servers, it all rejected him. He had no power here. I am leaving, he said, his voice trembling. And I expect you to fix this before Sunday. I won't be there Sunday, I said, returning my gaze to my monitor. I have work to do. "You are my daughter," he shouted, desperation cracking his voice. "That means you listen to me." I stopped typing. I looked up at him one last time. My eyes met his, and I didn't blink. "Not in here," I said. I gestured to the room, to the 42nd floor, to the empire I had built while he was busy praising Gavin. "Out there, in your house, I might be your daughter," I said. "But in this office, power does not come from titles or biology. Dad, it comes from the signature on the check, and right now, my signature is the only one that counts." He stood there for another second, his mouth opening and closing, fishing for words that wouldn't come. Then, he turned and walked out. He didn't slam the door. You couldn't slam these doors. They had hydraulic hinges that closed them softly, with a decisive, expensive click. I watched him walk down the hallway, past the rows of analysts who didn't even look up. He looked small. He looked like a visitor who had gotten lost in a museum. I waited until he turned the corner toward the elevators. Then, I pressed the intercom button. "Sarah?" I said. "Yes, Ms. Lawson. My father has left the building. Please ensure he is removed from the guest list for any future visits. And get me the legal team on line 1. I want to make sure the audit confirmation was received." "Right away," she said. I took a sip of my espresso. It was still warm. The meeting had taken less than 10 minutes. I went back to work. The heavy oak door had clicked shut. But the silence it left behind was not empty. It was vibrating with the kind of tension that usually precedes a market crash. I stared at the wood grain for exactly 5 seconds before I stood up. I was not done. My father had walked out. Yes, but he had walked out with the staggering, drunken gait of a man whose entire worldview had just been inverted. He was heading for the elevators, but I knew the building logistics. The express elevators to the lobby took time to arrive during peak hours. He would be standing there, staring at the brushed steel doors, trapped in a glass box with his own humiliation. I walked out of my office. Past Sarah's desk, she looked up, startled, her headset half off. "Ms. Lawson?" she asked. "Do you want me to call security?" "No," I said, my voice steady. "I will handle the exit interview." I walked down the long, carpeted corridor of the executive wing. The air was cool and smelled of expensive cleaning products. At the end of the hall, near the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a dizzying view of the city, my father was standing. He wasn't pressing the call button. He was just standing there, one hand resting against the wall for support, looking at the rows of analysts working in the bullpen adjacent to the lobby. He was watching a 25-year-old junior associate execute a trade that was likely worth more than his pension. He looked small. He looked like a man who had brought a knife to a nuclear war. I stopped 10 feet away from him. I didn't say anything. I let my presence do the work. He turned slowly. His face was pale, the red flush of anger from earlier replaced by a gray. Hollow shock. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in perhaps a decade. He wasn't seeing the daughter who needed $20 for gas. He was seeing the predator who sat at the top of the food chain. "Why?" he asked. His voice was cracked, devoid of the bluster he usually wore like armor. "Why didn't you tell us? Why let us think? Why let us believe you were failing?" "I never said I was failing," I replied. I crossed my arms, leaning slightly against the glass wall. "I told you I worked in finance. I told you I was busy. I told you I was handling complex assets. You said you did admin." "I said I managed the administration of the portfolio," I corrected him. "You heard what you wanted to hear. You heard secretary, because that fit the box you built for me." "You could have corrected us," he said, shaking his head. "At Christmas, at the barbecues. When Gavin was going on and on about his little deals, you could have said something. You could have shut him up." "I could have," I admitted, "but I wanted to know something." "Know what?" "I wanted to know if you loved me." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. My father flinched as if I had slapped him. "Of course we love you," he protested, but his eyes darted away. "We are your parents." "No," I said. You loved the idea of helping me. You loved the superiority of pity. You loved feeling like the successful ones who had to support the straggler. But I wanted to know if you respected me. I wanted to see if you would treat me with dignity, even if you thought I had nothing. I took a step closer, my heels clicking on the marble. And I got my answer yesterday, I said, when you uninvited me. That was complicated, he stammered. We were just trying to. You were trying to keep the standards high, I finished for him. That is what you said. You didn't want me to embarrass Gavin in front of his investors. You didn't want the admin girl bringing down the room. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Well, Dad, here is the irony. The room Gavin is so desperate to impress, I own the room. The standard he is chasing, I set it. And the only reason he has a fund to brag about is because I quietly wrote a check to keep him afloat when nobody else would. You funded him, he whispered. I am the anchor. I said, Harborline Ventures, that is me. I put in $4 million because I thought, despite his arrogance, he might actually make money for the family. I didn't ask for credit. I didn't ask for a seat at the table. I just wanted him to succeed. My father looked ill. He leaned back against the wall, rubbing his forehead. Does he know? He knows Harborline pulled its money, I said. He doesn't know Harborline is Alice. Not yet. Alice, you have to stop this, he pleaded. The anger was gone, replaced by a desperate, wheedling tone. If you pull that money, you will humiliate him. You will humiliate your sister. Think about the family name. Think about how this looks. How it looks, I repeated. You uninvited your own daughter from a birthday party because you were worried about how it looked, and now you want me to save you from the consequences of that choice. It is just business, he cried out. Why make it personal? You made it personal when you decided I wasn't good enough to eat cake with you. I said, I am just making it business, strictly business. My phone buzzed in my hand. I glanced down. It was a notification from the internal messenger. Ethan Reeves. Update market chatter is picking up. 2 other LPS just called the Stonewick IR desk asking about the audit rumor. It is starting to cascade. Gavin is telling people the anchor is solid, says he has deep personal ties to the capital source. He is digging the hole deeper. I looked up at my father. He was watching me check my phone, realizing that the device in my hand held more power than he had ever possessed. Gavin is lying to his investors right now, I said calmly. He is telling them his anchor investor is stable. He is using my money he thinks comes from some anonymous institution to promise safety to new people. If I don't pull out, I am complicit in fraud. Is that what you want? You want me to help him lie. I want you to have mercy, my father snapped. He is family. Is he? I asked. Was I family yesterday, or was I just a liability? Alice, please. His voice cracked. He looked old suddenly. The vitality of the head of the household had drained away, leaving a tired man in a windbreaker that didn't fit the setting. Don't ruin him. Don't make us a laughingstock. I am asking you, as your father. I looked at him. I remembered the years of subtle digs, the comments about my sensible shoes, the way they seated me at the children's end of the table at Thanksgiving, the way he looked at Gavin with hero worship while looking at me with tolerant disappointment. You are asking me to value your reputation over my own dignity, I said. You are asking me to set myself on fire so Gavin can stay warm. He didn't answer. The silence was his answer. You never asked, Dad, I said softly. In 10 years, you never once asked me what I actually did. You never asked to see my office. You never asked about my day. You just assumed. And now that you know the truth, you are not proud. You are just afraid. The elevator dinged. The door slid open, revealing the polished, mirrored interior. Go home, I said. The party is on Sunday. Right, I am sure it will be very exclusive. He looked at the open elevator, then back at me. He opened his mouth to speak, to argue, to play the parent card one last time, but he looked at my eyes and saw nothing there he could grab onto. I had become something he couldn't parent. I had become a market force. He stepped into the elevator. He didn't look back. The doors closed, slicing him out of my view. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My shoulders dropped an inch. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like amputation, painful, bloody, but necessary to stop the rot. I turned and walked back toward my office. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Sarah was pretending to type when I passed her desk. "Hold all calls," I said, indefinitely. "Yes, Ms. Lawson." I walked into my office and the door sealed shut behind me. The solitude was instant and welcome. I sat down and unlocked my phone. Lauren had called 4 more times. I swiped the notifications away. I wasn't going to argue with her. She was collateral damage. Perhaps, but she had also been a willing participant in the narrative that Alice was the failure. She had enjoyed the contrast. It made her shine brighter. I opened my secure messaging app to check in with Ethan, but there was a new message at the top of my inbox. It wasn't from Ethan. It wasn't from my family. It was from a number I didn't recognize, with an area code that matched the suburbs where Stonewick's back office was located. I opened the text. Sender, unknown message. I am an accountant at Stonewick. I saw the redemption notice from Harborline today. I saw the signature. I have been waiting for someone to pull the thread. I stared at the screen. A second message appeared, bubbling up 3 dots before resolving into text. Message: Gavin has been moving personal expenses into the management fee bucket for 18 months. Renovations on the lake house. The new cars. It is all buried in the operational overhead. If you want the ledger, I can give it to you. I just want to make sure I'm protected when the ship goes down. I felt a smile touch my lips. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a hunter who just realized the trap didn't just catch a leg, it caught the neck. My father had worried about standards. He had worried about the family looking bad. He had no idea. The withdrawal of capital was just the beginning. The real storm was buried in the spreadsheets. I typed a reply. I am listening. I set the phone down. The skyline outside was darkening. The city lights turning into a sea of diamonds. I wasn't just uninvited from the party anymore. I was about to become the reason the music stopped. I did not attend my father's 60th birthday party. I was exactly where they wanted me to be, which was nowhere near the villa on the lake. I was sitting on my balcony in the city with a glass of vintage red wine and a book I had been meaning to read for months. But just because I was not physically present at the festivities did not mean I missed the show. In the world of high finance, information travels faster than light. It moves through text messages, through hushed phone calls in hallways, and through the raised eyebrows of assistants who overhear too much. And because I had spent a decade building a network of people who respected me, people who actually knew what I did for a living, my phone became a live feed of the disaster unfolding an hour away. The party was supposed to be Gavin's coronation. It was designed to be the moment he ascended from a mid-market fund manager to a serious player in the private equity world. The villa had been staged like a movie set. I heard later from a junior analyst who was there as a +1 that the catering budget alone could have paid off my student loans twice over. There were ice sculptures. There was a jazz quartet flown in from New Orleans. There were waiters in white gloves passing around hors d'oeuvres that cost more per bite than most people earned in an hour. But there was also a smell in the air. It was not the scent of expensive perfume or roasted duck. It was the scent of blood. The rumor about the withdrawal had started circulating around noon that day. When you pull $4 million out of a fund the size of Stonewick and demand an audit on the grounds of fraud, people notice. The fund administrator talks to the bank. The bank talks to the compliance officer. The compliance officer has lunch with a friend at a hedge fund. By dinner time, the whisper network is screaming. Gavin stood at the door, greeting guests with his trademark confident smile. But I was told his eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal. He was shaking hands, clapping men on the back, and laughing a little too loudly. He was trying to project stability. He was trying to project standards, The first crack in the facade appeared before the appetizers were even cleared. One of the guests was a senior partner at a rival firm, a man named Marcus who had known me for years but had no idea I was related to Gavin. He texted me at 7:30. Text weird vibe at your brother-in-law's thing. Gavin looks like he is sweating through his suit. Just heard a rumor that his anchor LP walked out this morning. Is that true? I didn't reply. I just took a sip of my wine, according to the grapevine. Marcus didn't keep his curiosity to himself. He cornered Gavin near the open bar. It was supposed to be a casual chat, the kind of friendly sparring that happens between competitors. But Marcus had asked the question loud enough for the nearby circle to hear. I heard Stonewick just lost a major liquidity provider, Marcus had said, swirling his scotch. Is everything solid for the next capital call? Gavin had frozen, the color reportedly drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure under the harsh chandelier lights. That is just market noise, Gavin had stammered, his voice tight. We are going through a strategic rebalancing. We are actually oversubscribed for the next round. The anchor is solid. Institutional backing continues. He was still using the line. He was still lying. He was standing in his own living room, surrounded by people he needed to impress, and he was doubling down on a falsehood that I had already exposed to the auditors. My sister, Lauren, tried to intervene. She swept in with a tray of champagne flutes, her smile plastered on with terrifying precision. She was wearing a dress that probably cost $5,000, but she looked frantic. She touched Gavin's arm, laughing a bright, brittle laugh that sounded like glass breaking. Oh, no business talk tonight, she chirped. This is a party for Dad. Come on, everyone, let's talk about the lake. Have you seen the view from the terrace? She was trying to pivot. She was trying to be the perfect hostess. But the men in that circle didn't look at the view. They looked at each other. They exchanged glances that said everything. If the manager is sweating a question about liquidity, do not write the check. Then there was my mother. She was fluttering around the room like a nervous moth, guiding guests toward the buffet, talking rapidly about how proud she was of the family success. She was trying to weave a narrative of perfection. She told anyone who would listen that Gavin was just so busy with international deals, and my father. My father was at the bar. He wasn't mingling. He wasn't shaking hands with the heavy hitters he had been so desperate to meet. He was drinking. A friend of mine who works in wealth management for a family office was there. She texted me around 8 o'clock. Text, your dad is knocking back bourbon like it is water. He looks miserable. He just snapped at a waiter for clearing his glass too early. My father knew. He knew that the strategic rebalancing was a lie. He knew that the market noise was his own daughter. He was standing in the middle of the luxury he had idolized his entire life, realizing that the foundation was made of quicksand. He was watching Gavin lie to people's faces, and for the first time, he couldn't pretend it was just good business. The real disaster struck an hour later. Gavin had been banking on this night to close a deal with a representative from a large family office in Chicago. This was the whale he needed to land to replace my capital. The representative, a man named Mr. Sterling, was the guest of honor. Gavin had seated him next to Dad, but Mr. Sterling had a smartphone, and Mr. Sterling had a due diligence team that worked late, midway through the main course. Mr. Sterling received an email. He read it. He frowned. He looked at Gavin. Then he looked at his phone again. He didn't make a scene. He was too professional for that. He simply leaned over to Gavin and spoke in a low voice. But the room was acoustic, and the table was quiet because everyone was waiting for a toast. Gavin, Mr. Sterling said, my team just flagged a notification from your auditor. Something about a pause in operations due to a dispute with a limited partner. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence that sucks the air out of a room. It is a misunderstanding, Gavin said quickly, his hands shaking as he reached for his water. A clerical error. We are sorting it out on Monday. A pause in operations is not a clerical error, Mr. Sterling said, placing his napkin on the table. And the note mentions a material breach of good faith. I think we are going to have to pause our commitment until this is clarified. We cannot deploy capital into a fund with an active governance dispute. He stood up. Please, enjoy the dinner. I have to make a call. Mr. Sterling walked away from the table. He didn't come back. That was the moment the party died. The air went out of the room. The other guests, the sharks my mother had warned me about, smelled blood in the water. If a major family office was walking away before dessert, the deal was toxic. Gavin didn't even try to save the dinner. He stood up, abandoning his seat, abandoning my father's birthday toast. He pulled his phone out and rushed toward his home office, shouting something about incompetent lawyers. He turned his father-in-law's 60th birthday party into a war room. For the rest of the night, guests were left to awkwardly make conversation, while Gavin shouted into his phone in the next room. His voice carried through the thin, expensive walls. He was heard screaming at his compliance officer. He was heard begging someone to hold off the notification. My mother tried to distract everyone. She ordered the cake to be brought out early. It was a massive, 3-tiered thing, decorated with gold leaf. They sang happy birthday, but Gavin wasn't there to sing. He was too busy trying to save his career. And then came the moment that, when I heard about it later, actually made my chest ache for a brief second. Just a second. A woman from the country club, someone who didn't know the family well, was looking at the mantelpiece. There was a large framed photo of the family from 5 years ago. It was a studio portrait. Lauren was in the front, beaming. Gavin was behind her, looking lordly. My parents were seated, and there, in the corner, partially obscured by a fake plant, was me. I didn't realize there was another daughter, the woman said, turning to my mother. Where is she tonight? Is she traveling? The room went quiet again. The guests looked at my mother. My mother had a choice. She could have told the truth. She could have said, "She is working." She could have said, "We had a disagreement." Instead, she smoothed her skirt and gave a tight, pained smile. "Oh, Alice," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Poor thing. She is going through a difficult time. She just wasn't up for a big social event. You know how it is. She is very fragile." She lied. She painted me as the broken, unstable child to explain my absence, rather than admitting they had kicked me out. The woman nodded sympathetically. "Oh, that is a shame. I hope she finds her way." My father was standing right there. He heard my mother call me fragile. He heard her erase my success and replace it with a pitiful excuse. He said nothing. He stared into his glass of bourbon. He looked at the floor. He was ashamed. Yes, but he was too weak to correct the record. He let the lie stand because the truth that his fragile daughter was the one currently destroying Gavin's empire with a single email was too terrifying to admit. By 10 o'clock, the party was emptying out. The guests made polite excuses. "Early morning tomorrow. Babysitter needs to go." They fled the toxicity. The catering staff, however, saw the aftermath. I used a high-end catering company for my own corporate events, and the industry is incredibly tight-knit. One of the servers who worked the party texted a friend of mine the next morning. The gossip was brutal. Apparently, after the last guest left, Gavin didn't apologize to my father. He didn't help clean up. He turned on Lauren. He screamed that her family was sabotaging him. He threw a crystal vase against the wall, a vase that I knew for a fact was a wedding gift from my aunt. He blamed everyone but himself. He paced around the ruined living room, ranting about how I was jealous, how I was vindictive, how I didn't understand business. My father reportedly sat on the sofa, watching his son-in-law throw a tantrum, and said only one thing the entire night. "She isn't jealous. Gavin," he had mumbled, slurring his words slightly. "She is the bank." Gavin had stormed out to the terrace. The next morning, the sun rose over the city, and I woke up feeling remarkably well-rested. I made coffee. I checked the markets. The Nikkei was up. Then, at 9 o'clock sharp, an email arrived in my inbox. It wasn't from a family member. It was from a law firm representing Stonewick Growth Partners. Subject: urgent demand for meeting and preservation of evidence. Ms. Lawson, we represent Stonewick Growth Partners and Mr. Gavin Holt. Your recent actions regarding the Harborline Ventures capital withdrawal have caused material and reputational damage to our client. We dispute the validity of your bani faith claim and believe your actions constitute tortious interference with prospective business relations. We demand your physical presence at a meeting at our offices within 24 hours to discuss a retraction of your notification to the auditor. Failure to appear or failure to retract these damaging claims will result in immediate legal action seeking damages for the lost capital commitments resulting from your interference. Govern yourself accordingly. I read the email twice. It was a scare tactic. It was a bully trying to use big words to frighten someone they thought was small. They thought I would panic at the threat of a lawsuit. They thought Alice, the administrator, would crumble. They didn't know that I had a team of lawyers who ate letters like this for breakfast. I forwarded the email to my legal counsel with a 2-word instruction: game on. Then I opened a new window and typed a reply to Gavin's lawyers myself. I didn't loop in my counsel yet. I wanted them to hear it from me. To legal counsel for Stonewick, I will be there. I suggest you have your client present as well. And tell him to bring his full ledger. I am not coming to retract. I am coming to collect. I hit send. The party was over. Now came the hangover. The legal threat from Stonewick was a piece of paper designed to bark, but I knew it had no teeth. However, Gavin apparently realized that his lawyers were not moving fast enough to soothe his ego. So he decided to bypass counsel and come for me directly. My phone lit up at 10 in the morning. It was not an email this time. It was a direct text message, stripping away the pretense of corporate politeness he had tried to maintain the day before. Gavin, you need to stop this immediately. You are destroying this family. Do you have any idea what you are doing to your sister? You are selfish. Alice, you have always been selfish. Pick up the phone. I stared at the screen. The projection was almost impressive. He was the one who had banned me from a family event to protect his vanity. Yet I was the one being labeled selfish for protecting my assets. He was trying to reframe a financial fraud investigation as a domestic dispute. It was a classic manipulation tactic: drag the professional down into the emotional mud where the rules of logic no longer apply. I did not reply. 10 minutes later, Lauren messaged, "Lauren, Alice, please, I am sitting here shaking. Gavin is tearing the house apart. He says we might lose the lake house if the fund collapses. I know you are angry about the party, and you have every right to be. But haven't you made your point? Do you really want to see Dad heartbroken? He is a mess. Please, just talk to me." I looked at the message. The guilt trip was predictable, weaponizing my father's fragility to shield Gavin's incompetence. But there was something in Lauren's tone, the mention of losing the house, the physical shaking that made me pause. Lauren was not the villain here. She was the collateral damage. She was a woman who had bought into a dream that was currently being foreclosed on. I typed a reply. Meet me at the coffee shop on 3rd and Grand. 30 minutes. Alone. I walked to the coffee shop. It was a high-end place near the Marblegate building, the kind where venture capitalists pitched seed rounds over $6 lattes. It was my turf. Lauren was already there when I arrived. She looked like a ghost of the woman who had hosted the party 2 nights ago. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and she was wearing a sweatshirt that looked 2 sizes too big. It was the first time in years I had seen her look unpolished in public. I sat down opposite her. I had ordered a black coffee. She had a cup of tea that she was gripping with both hands, as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the earth. "Alice," she breathed out, her voice trembling. "Thank God." "I have 20 minutes, I said calmly. "I have a meeting with the compliance team at 11. "Compliance?" She flinched at the word. "Alice, you have to stop the audit. Gavin says if the audit goes through, everything freezes. He says the investors will sue him. He says we could go bankrupt." "Gavin is right about the consequences," I said, "but he is lying about the cause. The audit is happening because he lied to his investors. Lauren, he told them I was a committed institutional backer when I wasn't. That is fraud. I didn't commit the fraud. I just reported it." He didn't mean it like that, Lauren argued, tears welling up. He was just trying to build confidence. That is how business works, isn't it? You fake it until you make it. No, I said. That is how con artists work. In my business, if you fake it, you go to prison. She stared at me, a tear sliding down her cheek. Why are you doing this? Is it really just because of the party? Because if it is, I am sorry. I am so sorry. We should have stood up to him. Mom and Dad, we should have told him no. Why didn't you? I asked. The question hung between us. The noise of the espresso machine seemed to fade away. Lauren looked down at her tea. She took a shuddering breath. Because he is Gavin, she whispered. Because he has always been like that. He has this way of making you feel like you are lucky to be in his orbit, and he has always... She trailed off. He has always what? I pressed. He has always thought you were embarrassing, she admitted, her voice so quiet, I almost missed it. I didn't blink. Go on. He told me, years ago, when we first got married, he said your job sounded small. He said you didn't have the hunger. He used to joke that you were the kind of person who would end up with 10 cats in a studio apartment, and I didn't stop him. She looked up at me, her face twisted in misery. I wanted his approval, Alice. I wanted to be the successful couple. So when he made fun of you, I just laughed, or I stayed quiet, and over time, it just became the truth in our house. Alice is the quiet one. Alice is the one who needs help. Alice is not up to standard. So you let him erase me, I said. To make yourself feel bigger. I didn't want to erase you, she sobbed. I just wanted peace. And now you are the one holding the gun. And I don't even recognize you. Who are you? Alice. You run a $400 million portfolio since when? Since before you married him, I said. I just didn't feel the need to broadcast it to people who judged me by my handbag. I stood up. I placed a $20 bill on the table, a deliberate echo of the money my father had given me. I am not doing this to hurt you, Lauren, I said. But I am not going to set myself on fire to keep Gavin warm anymore. He built a house of cards. I am just opening the window. He is going to fight you, she warned, wiping her eyes. He sent a letter to his lawyer this morning. He's going to sue you for damages. Let him try, I said. I walked out of the coffee shop. I didn't look back. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The truth was out. The family dynamic, the carefully constructed hierarchy where I was at the bottom, had been shattered. Lauren knew, and she knew that I knew. When I got back to my office, the formal legal threat was waiting in my inbox. It was a cease and desist order, coupled with a demand for damages due to tortious interference with economic advantage. It claimed that my malicious and sudden withdrawal of capital was a calculated attempt to sabotage Stonewick's fundraising round. I didn't panic. I didn't call Gavin. I forwarded the email to the General Counsel of Marblegate Capital. I added a simple note. Please handle this. Standard frivolous response. Then, I broke my own rule. I replied to Gavin one last time. I didn't want him texting me again. I wanted the boundaries to be made of steel. To Gavin Holt. See Marblegate Legal. Stonewick Legal Gavin. My withdrawal was executed in strict accordance with the key man and good faith provisions of our limited partnership agreement. The specific clause regarding misrepresentation of Anchor Capital is non-negotiable. Any further communication regarding this matter must be directed to my legal counsel. Do not text me. Do not call me. Do not contact my family to relay messages. If you continue to harass a limited partner, I will file a separate motion for breach of fiduciary privacy. Alice Lawson, Senior Partner, Marblegate Capital. I hit send. That was it. The bridge was not just burned, it was detonated. An hour later, the real weapon arrived. It came through an encrypted email channel that Ethan had set up for whistleblowers. It was from the anonymous accountant who had texted me the day before. Subject Ledger Review /FY 23 to 24. Attached are the raw export files from the expense management system. Look at the tab marked Operational Overlay. Look at the vendor, Lakeside Renovations, LLC. Look at the recurring payments to Holt Consulting Group. I called Ethan immediately. Ethan, did you get the file? I am looking at it right now, Ethan said. His voice was hushed, the tone of a man watching a car crash in slow motion. Alice, this is bad. I mean, it is amateur hour bad. Tell me, I said. He has a vendor set up called Holt Consulting Group, Ethan explained. It is receiving a monthly retainer of $15,000 from the fund's operating capital. The address for the consulting group matches his parents' house in Florida. There are no invoices for services rendered. It just looks like a salary siphon. And the renovations, Lakeside Renovations, LLC, was paid $80,000 last October for office improvements. But the Stonewick office is a leased space in a commercial tower. They don't do structural renovations, but I checked the permit filings for that month. Guess who applied for a permit to build a new deck and boathouse? Gavin and Lauren Holt, I said. Bingo, Ethan said. He used LP money, your money, to build his deck. That is conversion of funds. That is theft. If this gets out, he is not just losing the fund. He is looking at an SEC ban and potential criminal charges. I stared at the city. The sun was high and bright, casting harsh shadows. This was the smoking gun. This was the end of Gavin. If I released this to the auditors, the investigation would shift from misrepresentation to embezzlement. He would be finished. Alice, Ethan asked, do you want me to forward this to the audit team? I hesitated, not out of mercy, but out of precision. Not yet, I said. This is raw data. I need it verified. I want you to hire an external forensic accounting firm, someone independent, not Marblegate. Have them verify the vendor addresses and the permit matches. I want a certified report. If we pull the trigger on this, I want to make sure the bullet doesn't bounce. Understood, Ethan said. I will get the forensic team on it this afternoon. It will take 48 hours. Do it. I hung up. My phone buzzed again. It was my father. I stared at the screen. I had blocked his number on the office line. But he was calling my cell. I could have ignored it. I probably should have ignored it. But the conversation with Lauren had opened a vein, and I felt the need to close it. I answered, Hello, Dad? Alice. His voice was low, devoid of the anger he had shown in my office. He sounded exhausted. Lauren told me she met with you. She did. She says you are going ahead with the legal battle. She says Gavin is talking about lawsuits. Gavin is flailing, I said. He is trying to scare me. It won't work. Can you stop? He asked. It wasn't a demand this time. It was a plea. I don't care who is right. I don't care about the money. I just can't watch this family tear itself apart. Your mother hasn't stopped crying for 2 days. Can't you just let it go for us? Let it go, I asked. Dad, he stole. He lied. And he used my name to do it. You are asking me to cover up a crime to keep the peace. I am asking you to be the bigger person, he said. You have so much. Alice, I saw your office. You have everything. Gavin has this one thing. If you take it away, you destroy him. I am not taking it away, I said. He threw it away. He threw it away when he decided to use investor money to renovate his lake house. There was a silence on the line. What? You heard me. The audit is going to find it. Dad, he has been stealing from the fund. That is how he pays for the lifestyle you all admire so much. It is fake. It is stolen. That can't be true, my father stammered. Gavin is a good man. He is ambitious. He is a fraud, I said. And I am not destroying the family. I am just refusing to be the one who pays for the lie anymore. Alice, please, he whispered. I am sorry, Dad, I said. But the truth is running its course. I am just standing out of the way. I ended the call. I sat there in the silence of my office. I felt a heavy weight in my stomach. The sickening feeling of knowing that the blow I was about to deliver would cause permanent damage. But then I looked at the email from Ethan. I looked at the evidence of the payments. They had uninvited me because I wasn't standard enough. They had looked down on me because I worked hard and lived simply. Meanwhile, their golden boy was building decks with stolen cash. My computer pinged. A secure message from Ethan. Forensic team is engaged. Preliminary look confirms the address match for the consulting group. It is a direct match to his parents' residence. We have him. Alice. Stone cold. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. The legal threats. The guilt trips. The emotional blackmail. It was all noise. The only thing that mattered was the ledger, and the ledger did not lie. I typed a final instruction to Ethan. Prepare the package. We presented at the meeting. The game of he said, she said was over. Now, we were playing by the numbers, and the numbers were about to crush Stonewick into dust. The lawyer's threat I had received was a blunder. In poker terms, Gavin had shoved his chips all in on a bluff while holding a pair of twos. Assuming I would fold because I was afraid of the table stakes, he did not realize that I owned the casino. By demanding a meeting to discuss a retraction, Gavin had legally opened the door for a formal governance review. He wanted a private scolding where he could bully me into submission. I decided to give him a public execution. I did not reply to his lawyers with a simple confirmation. Instead, I had Ethan draft a formal demand letter under the Harbor Line letterhead, citing Article 19 of the Limited Partnership Agreement. To the general partner, in light of the dispute regarding liquidity and management integrity, Harbor Line Ventures exercises its right to convene an emergency general meeting of limited partners. We require a full transparency session regarding fee structures, operational cash flow, and the verification of all vendor payments made in the last fiscal year. This meeting will not be a private arbitration. It will be an open forum for all current investors. I hit send at 8 in the morning. By 8:30, the panic was palpable even from across the city. Gavin had been trying to contain the leak, telling individual investors that the rumor about the withdrawal was just a misunderstanding with a single, disgruntled client. If I forced him into a room with everyone, he couldn't spin separate lies to separate people. He would have to tell one story. And that story would have to match the math. And the math was currently against him. At 9 o'clock, Gavin's personal assistant called my office. Sarah, following my instructions, put her through to voicemail. Then Gavin's lawyer called Marblegate's general counsel, begging for a pre-meeting conference to align on the agenda. I instructed my counsel to reply with one word, no. Gavin tried to buy time. At 10 o'clock, a revised email arrived from Stonewick. They claimed that due to complex accounting reconciliation and scheduling conflicts with the auditor, the meeting could not be held for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks would give him time to move money. 2 weeks would give him time to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. 2 weeks would give him time to fake a ledger. I picked up my phone and called Ethan. He is stalling, I said. He wants 2 weeks. Standard move, Ethan replied. He is probably trying to secure a bridge loan to cover the hole in the operating account so it looks clean when the auditors arrive. He doesn't have 2 weeks, I said. Send the ultimatum. Tell them if the meeting does not happen within 48 hours, Harbor Line will unilaterally issue a material breach notification to every other limited partner in the fund, attaching the preliminary evidence of the unauthorized vendor payments. Alice, Ethan said, a note of professional awe in his voice. That is the kill switch. If we send that notification, the fund is legally dissolved. You are putting a gun to his head. He pulled the trigger first, I said. Send it. The ultimatum went out at 10:15. At 10:30, my secure line rang. It was not Gavin. It was not his lawyer. It was a number I didn't recognize. But the caller ID identified it as a mobile phone registered to Todd Miller. I knew the name. Todd was Gavin's co-founder at Stonewick. He was the quiet partner, the numbers guy who sat in the back of the room while Gavin did the sales pitch. I had always assumed Todd was complicit, or at least willfully blind. I answered. This is Alice Lawson. Ms. Lawson. The voice on the other end was shaking. It was a whisper, as if he were hiding in a bathroom or a car. This is Todd Miller. I know who you are. I know Harbor Line is you. I didn't confirm or deny it. I just waited. I need you to know, Todd continued, his words tumbling out rapidly, that I didn't sign off on the consulting group payments. I saw them in the quarterly review, and I asked Gavin about them. He told me they were for external deal sourcing. He told me it was legitimate. But you know now that it wasn't, I said coldly. I suspected, Todd admitted. But when I saw your demand for the audit this morning, I went into the archives. I checked the IP addresses for the invoices. They are coming from his parents' house in Florida. Ms. Lawson, I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids. I cannot go to jail for his renovation budget. Then you have a choice, Todd, I said. You can stand next to him at the meeting and go down with the ship, or you can hand over the keys. I am not going down for him, Todd said, his voice hardening with fear. He is drowning. Ms. Lawson. He is calling everyone he knows, trying to get a loan to plug the gap. He is frantic. He is talking about liquidating the portfolio to cover the tracks. He can't liquidate without your signature, I said. I know. That is why I'm locking him out of the bank portal as we speak. I felt a surge of adrenaline. The fortress wasn't just under siege. The gates were being opened from the inside. Good, I said. Keep him locked out. And Todd, when the meeting happens, bring your laptop? I will, he whispered. I am sorry. The line went dead. I leaned back in my chair. It was over. Gavin didn't just have an angry investor. He had a mutiny. Stonewick was fracturing in real time. But Gavin, true to his nature, did not accept defeat. When a narcissist loses control of the narrative, they do not apologize. They attack the source of the truth. At noon. My mother called. I had been ignoring her calls for 2 days, but this time, she left a voicemail that transcribed automatically on my screen. Alice, pick up this phone. Gavin just told us what you are doing. He says you are blackmailing him. He says you are threatening to tell lies to his business partners unless he pays you. How could you? You are making us look like criminals. You are disgracing this family. I read the text. The distortion was breathtaking. Gavin had twisted my demand for an audit, a standard procedure to prevent crime, into an act of blackmail. He was feeding my parents a story where he was the victim of a jealous, vindictive sister-in-law. I decided to answer the next call. I needed to shatter the distortion field. The phone rang again 5 minutes later. Hello, Mom, I said. You stop this, she screamed. I had never heard my mother scream like that. It was a primal, panicked sound. You stop this right now. Gavin is in the hospital. I paused. What? He is having panic attacks. He thinks he is having a heart attack. He is at the clinic, and it is your fault you are killing him. Alice, over what? Over a party invitation. Are you that petty? I am not killing him, Mom, I said, my voice dangerously calm. And this isn't about the party. It is, he told us. He said you are mad because you weren't invited. So you are using your little administrative tricks to mess with his paperwork. Administrative tricks? I laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. Mom, listen to me very carefully. Gavin stole money. He took $3 million from his investors, including me, and he used it to build your son-in-law's deck. He used it to pay himself a salary he didn't earn. That is not a paperwork error. That is grand larceny. You are lying, she sobbed. Gavin makes plenty of money. He is successful. He is successful because he spent my money, I said. And now I am asking for the receipt. That is not disgrace. Mom, disgrace is uninviting your own daughter to a birthday party because you thought she wasn't rich enough to be seen with you. You wanted standards. I am enforcing them. We are family, she wailed. You cover for family, not when they steal from me, I said, and certainly not when they treat me like the help. If you do this, she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, if you ruin him, don't you dare come to Christmas. Don't you dare show your face. I think I will be busy that week anyway, I said. I have a lot of admin to do. I hung up. My hand was shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer toxicity of the interaction. They were willing to defend a thief rather than apologize to the victim, simply because the thief wore a better suit. but the cracks were spreading. 10 minutes later, a text arrived from Lauren. Lauren. Is it true? Alice is what true, Lauren? About the money, I asked him if we could pay off the credit cards if the fund froze. I asked him where the renovation money actually came from. I waited. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Lauren. He threw a plate at me. Alice. He screamed that I was sounding like you. He didn't answer the question. I closed my eyes. Gavin's violence was the final confirmation. A man with nothing to hide answers the question. A man with everything to lose throws a plate. Alice. He is scared. Lauren, because he knows he got caught. Pack a bag. Go to a hotel. Do not stay in that house tonight. Lauren. He says it is all your fault. He says you trapped him. Alice, I didn't trap him. I just turned on the lights. He built the trap himself. Lauren didn't reply. But I saw the Reed receipt. At 2:00, the surrender arrived. It wasn't a white flag. It was a calendar invite from Stonewick's general email address. Subject Emergency General Meeting of Limited Partners. Date Friday, 9 a.m. Location, Stonewick Conference Room. B Agenda. Review of Capital Structure and Operational Audit. He had folded. He had no choice. Todd had locked him out of the bank. His investors were clamoring for answers, and his legal threats had bounced off me like bullets off a tank. He had to face the room. I forwarded the invite to Ethan. It is on, I said. Are you ready? Ethan asked. It is going to be a bloodbath. He is going to try to charm his way out of it. He is going to spin a story about temporary liquidity issues. Let him spin, I said. I have the slide. I spent the rest of the afternoon working on a single PowerPoint slide. I didn't need a deck of 20 pages. I didn't need complex graphs. I needed one image that would cut through the noise and silence the room instantly. I pulled the data from the forensic report Ethan had sent. On the left side of the slide, I placed the invoice from Lakeside Renovations, LLC, billed to the Stonewick Operational Fund for Office Infrastructure Improvements, Suite 400. The amount was $82,000. On the right side of the slide, I placed the building permit application filed with the county clerk by Gavin and Lauren Holt for residential deck and boathouse construction. The contractor listed was Lakeside Renovations, LLC. The date matched the invoice exactly, and in the center, I placed a photograph. It was a photo from Lauren's Instagram, posted 6 months ago. It showed Gavin standing on his new, gleaming teak deck, holding a glass of champagne, looking out at the water. The caption read, "Built on hard work and big dreams. Blessed." I added a single line of text at the bottom of the slide, in bold, red font, "Source of funds, client capital." I looked at the slide. It was brutal. It was undeniable. It was the end of his career, captured in a single JPEG. I saved the file to a USB drive. I also emailed a copy to Todd Miller with a note. Load this as the final agenda item. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting over the city. Somewhere out there, in the suburbs, Gavin was likely pacing his living room, rehearsing his lies, thinking he could still charm the snakes. He thought he was walking into a negotiation. He didn't realize he was walking into an autopsy. I checked my phone one last time. There was a message from my father. Sent an hour ago. "Dad, please, one word. No arguments, no commands. Just a beg." I turned the phone off. "No," I said to the empty room. I picked up my bag. The meeting was in 16 hours. I intended to get a very good night's sleep. The invitation arrived on Thursday afternoon, not through a screaming voicemail or a demanded summons, but via a text message from my mother that felt unnervingly hesitant. "We would like to take you to dinner tonight, just the three of us. Please, we can meet at that bistro near your apartment, the quiet one." I stared at the screen. The bistro was a small, unassuming place with paper tablecloths and excellent French onion soup. It was not a place for heavy hitters. It was not a place for standards. It was a place for people who were tired of performing. I accepted. When I walked in at 7 o'clock, they were already seated. That was the first sign that the tectonic plates of our family dynamic had shifted. My parents were never early for me. Usually, I was the one waiting at the table, checking my watch, while they arrived 20 minutes late with breathless stories about traffic or a phone call with Lauren. Tonight, they were 10 minutes early. My father was wearing a sweater, not a suit. My mother was not wearing her jewelry. They looked smaller, huddled together in the booth, staring at the menu as if it were a legal indictment. When I approached the table, my father stood up. He didn't say anything. He just stood up. It was a reflex of respect, a gesture he usually reserved for his boss or the pastor. He had never done it for me. "Hello, Alice," he said. His voice was rough, cleared of the booming authority that had defined my childhood. "Dad, Mom," I said, sliding into the seat opposite them. The waitress came and went. We ordered water. We ordered food we wouldn't eat. The silence that stretched between us was thick enough to choke on. It wasn't the angry silence of the office meeting. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of shame. My mother was the first to break it. She reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine, but not quite daring to touch it. "We wanted to see you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Before, whatever happens tomorrow happens. The meeting is at 9, I said simply. "It is going ahead." "We know," my father said. He looked at his hands. "Gavin told us. He said you have evidence. He said he is finished. He is finished because of his actions, not mine." I reminded them. "We know," my father repeated. He looked up, and his eyes were rimmed with red. "Alice, we want to apologize. For the birthday. For the uninviting. It was a mistake." "A mistake," I echoed, testing the weight of the word. "We didn't know," my mother added quickly, leaning in. "We didn't know how successful you were. We didn't know you were the one funding him. If we had known you were Harborline, we never would have—" She stopped. She caught herself. But the words were already out, hanging in the air like smoke. "If we had known you were Harborline—" I looked at them. I felt a profound sense of exhaustion, even in their apology. The transactional nature of their love was visible. They weren't sorry they had hurt their daughter. They were sorry they had insulted a millionaire. "That is the problem, isn't it?" I said softly. My father frowned. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, clasping my hands on the paper tablecloth. I looked directly into my father's eyes, demanding he hold my gaze. "If I wasn't Harborline," I said, "if I was exactly who you thought I was, Alice the admin assistant, Alice with the small apartment and the used car, would you be apologizing right now?" The silence returned. It was absolute. It screamed. They wanted to say yes. I could see the word forming on my mother's lips. The desperate, reflexive lie of parenthood. But they couldn't get it out. The truth was too obvious. If I were still the failure in their eyes, this dinner wouldn't be happening. I would still be the uninvited guest, the embarrassment, the loose end. My father looked away first. He picked up his water glass, but his hand was shaking so badly the ice clinked against the rim. He set it back down without drinking. "No," he whispered. "Frank," my mother gasped. "No," he said again, louder this time. He looked at me with a brutal, naked honesty. We would have told you to get over it. We would have told you to support Gavin." "Thank you," I said, "for finally telling me the truth." "We were wrong," my father said. "I see that now. We measured the wrong things. We thought Gavin was the winner because he was loud. We thought you were drifting." "I wasn't drifting," I said. "I was building—" "I know," he said, "and I'm ashamed that I didn't see it. I am ashamed that it took a bank statement for me to respect my own child." He looked defeated. A lifetime of ego, of playing the patriarch, of preening over his successful family, had evaporated. He was just an old man realizing he had bet on the wrong horse and alienated the jockey. "Can we fix it?" my mother asked, tears finally spilling over. "Alice, we are family. Can we just start over? Please, don't cut us out. I can't bear it if you cut us out." I looked at her. I thought about the years of exclusion. I thought about the standards. I could have walked away. I could have finished my wine, left a $100 bill on the table, and never spoken to them again. It would have been easy. It would have been justified. But I looked at my father's hands. They were the hands that had taught me to ride a bike, long before he decided I wasn't impressive enough. "I am not going to save Gavin," I said. "Let's be clear about that. Tomorrow, I am going to walk into that room and I'm going to present the facts. He will lose the fund. He might lose the house. He might face legal charges. I will not stop that process." My mother flinched, but she nodded. "We understand." "And I am not going to be the family bank," I continued. "I am not going to pay off his debts. I am not going to buy Lauren a new house. If they fall, they fall." "Okay," my father said hoarsely. "But," I said, "if you want a relationship with me with Alice, not with Harborline, then there are conditions." "Anything," my mother said. "No money," I said. "We never talk about money. You don't ask me about the market. You don't ask me for loans. You don't brag to your friends at the club about my portfolio. To you. I am just Alice. I do admin. That is the deal." My father nodded slowly. "No money. And," I added, looking at my father, "once a month, we have lunch, just you and me, Dad. No Mom, no Lauren, just us. And you have to get to know me. You have to ask me questions that aren't about work. You have to learn who I am. Because right now, you are sitting across from a stranger." He looked at me. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man he used to be before the status anxiety took over. He looked terrified. He realized that getting to know his 34-year-old daughter was going to be harder than pretending she didn't exist. "I would like that," he said. "I would like that very much." "And one last thing," I said. "We never mention Gavin. Not his name, not his bad luck, nothing. If you bring him up, I leave. The boundary is absolute." "Agreed," he said. We finished the dinner. It wasn't warm, it wasn't happy, but it was real. For the first time in decades, we ate a meal where nobody was pretending. When we walked out into the cool evening air, my father hesitated by his car. He looked like he wanted to hug me, but he stopped himself. He knew he hadn't earned that yet. "Good luck tomorrow," he said. "I don't need luck," I replied. "I have the ledger." I watched them drive away. I felt lighter. The anger that had fueled me for days had burned itself out, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't doing this for revenge anymore. I was doing it for hygiene. I was cleaning up the mess. My phone buzzed as I got into my car. It was Lauren. "Lauren, Mom says you met. She says you are still going through with the meeting. Alice, please, don't go too far. You have made your point. He is terrified." "Isn't that enough?" I sat in the driver's seat, the glow of the dashboard illuminating my face. Lauren still thought this was a game of emotions. She thought this was about making Gavin feel bad. She didn't understand that once you cross the line into fraud, feelings don't matter. I typed back, "Alice, I am not the one who went too far. Lauren, you watched him spend money that wasn't his. You watched him build a deck with stolen cash. You let him go too far. I am just the wall he finally hit." I put the phone down. An hour later, I was back in my apartment. The city lights were beautiful through the glass doors to the balcony. I poured a glass of water and sat at my dining table. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Gavin. It was 11:30 at night. The desperation hour. "Gavin, you think you are so smart. You think you can just walk in there and destroy me? I built this fund. I have friends. If you do this, you will regret it. No one likes a traitor. Alice, you are burning your own blood." I looked at the message. A week ago. A text like that from him would have made me anxious. It would have made me feel small. Now, it just looked pathetic. It was the lashing out of a man who realized his charisma had no currency in a court of law. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf in the corner of my living room. I reached for a small, wooden frame that was tucked away behind a stack of finance journals. I pulled it out and wiped a thin layer of dust from the glass. It was a photo of me and my father. I was 7 years old. We were at a science fair. I was holding a blue ribbon for a project on photosynthesis. He was kneeling next to me, grinning, looking genuinely proud. He wasn't looking at my clothes. He wasn't looking at who was watching. He was just looking at his daughter who had done something good. That man had disappeared a long time ago, buried under the need to keep standards high. I placed the photo on the center of my dining table. "I gave you a chance, Dad," I whispered to the empty room. "Now I have to finish the job." I turned off the lights. The apartment plunged into darkness, save for the city glow. The meeting was in 9 hours. My suit was pressed. The slide deck was loaded. The forensic report was printed and bound in a folder on my kitchen counter. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was just ready. Tomorrow. The standards were finally going to be met. The conference room at Stonewick Growth Partners was designed to intimidate. It featured floor-to-ceiling glass, a table made of reclaimed walnut that probably cost more than a mid-sized sedan, and a view of the suburbs that suggested endless manicured prosperity. But at 9 o'clock on Friday morning, the room did not feel prosperous. It felt like a courtroom where the defendant had not yet realized he was already guilty. I sat at the far end of the table, my back to the window. I was wearing my charcoal suit, the one I wore for closings. My laptop was closed in front of me. Gavin stood at the head of the table. He looked exhausted. His skin had a gray, pasty quality to it, and he had cut himself shaving near his jawline, but he was fighting. He was putting on the performance of his life. There were 12 other people in the room. Most were representatives from smaller family offices or high-net-worth individuals who had trusted Gavin with their retirement money. They looked anxious. They had heard the rumors. They had seen the emails. "I want to thank you all for coming on such short notice," Gavin said, his voice smooth, though I could hear the tremor underneath. "I know there has been some noise in the market over the last 48 hours. Rumors, speculation, and I want to assure you, right here and now, that Stonewick is stronger than it has ever been." He clicked a remote, and a graph appeared on the screen behind him. It showed a hockey stick growth curve that looked impressive until you realized the y-axis was projected revenue, not actual cash flow. "We are currently undergoing a strategic restructuring," Gavin continued, using his hands to emphasize the buzzwords. "One of our liquidity providers has decided to exit due to their own internal portfolio issues. It has nothing to do with Stonewick's performance. In fact, we view this as an opportunity to bring in new partners who are better aligned with our long-term vision of high-standard growth." He was lying. He was looking 12 people in the eye and telling them that I was the problem, that my withdrawal was a strategic opportunity rather than a frantic escape from a burning building. He paused and smiled, a tight, practiced expression. "So, before we move to the Q&A, I want to put your minds at ease. The operational capital is secure. The audit request you may have heard about is a formality, a clerical dispute that will be resolved by Monday. We are full steam ahead." He looked around the room, daring anyone to challenge him. I stood up. The sound of my chair sliding back against the hardwood floor was sharp and loud. Every head turned. Gavin looked at me. His eyes narrowed. "Alice," he said, his tone dripping with condescension, "this is a meeting for limited partners. Family matters are not on the agenda. Please wait outside." "I am not here as family." "Gavin," I said. My voice was calm, projecting clearly to the back of the room. "And I am not here to discuss the birthday party." "Security," Gavin said, reaching for the phone on the wall. "I am going to have you removed." "If you remove the representative of your anchor investor," I said, "you will be violating Article 19 of your governance agreement." Gavin froze. His hand hovered over the phone receiver. The room went deadly quiet. "What are you talking about?" he whispered. "I am the managing partner of Harborline Ventures," I said. The gasp in the room was audible. Todd Miller, sitting to Gavin's right, looked down at his shoes. He knew. But for everyone else, especially Gavin, the world just tilted on its axis. "You," Gavin stammered, "you are the admin girl. You don't have $4 million. "I have a portfolio of $400 million, I corrected him. "And $4 million of it was trusted to you, a trust you have violated." I walked to the front of the room. I didn't ask for permission. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and plugged it into the console on the table. "I am calling a vote of no confidence," I announced to the room. "And I am basing it on material evidence of embezzlement and fraud." "You can't do this," Gavin shouted, stepping toward me. "This is proprietary data. You are breaching confidentiality." "I am protecting the fiduciary interests of this group," I said. I clicked the remote. The screen changed. The hockey stick graph disappeared. In its place appeared the slide I had prepared the night before. On the left was the invoice, Lakeside Renovations, LLC, billed to Stonewick Operational Fund, $82,000. On the right was the permit residential deck and boathouse, applicant Gavin and Lauren Holt. And in the center was the photo of Gavin, smiling on his deck, raising a glass to his own genius. The caption I had added in red text seemed to burn into the screen, "Source of funds client capital." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. "This is not a clerical error," I said, pointing to the screen. "This is theft. Mr. Holt has been using the operational overhead of this fund to finance his personal lifestyle. He has been paying himself unauthorized consulting fees through a shell company registered to his parents' address. He has been treating your capital as his personal piggy bank." "That is a lie," Gavin screamed. He was sweating profusely now, his face a blotchy red. "That was a loan, a bridge loan. I was paying it back." "There is no loan agreement in the ledger," I said. "And limited partnership agreements strictly forbid personal loans to the general partner. It is illegal. Gavin," I turned to the room, "Harborline Ventures is triggering the bad boy clause immediately. We are demanding the return of all remaining capital, and we are submitting this evidence to the Securities and Exchange Commission this afternoon." A man in a gray suit stood up near the back. It was Mr. Henderson, the representative for a mid-sized pension fund that had committed $2 million. "Mr. Holt," Mr. Henderson said. His voice was ice cold. "Is this accurate? Did you use fund assets to pay for your home renovations?" "It is complicated," Gavin pleaded, his hands shaking. "You have to understand the context. We were going to have a record year." "I earned that bonus." "You didn't declare a bonus," Mr. Henderson said. "You hid it in the expenses." Mr. Henderson turned to me. "Miss Lawson, does your forensic audit cover the entire fiscal year?" "It does," I said. "And it gets worse." Mr. Henderson nodded. He looked at Gavin. "My firm is issuing a formal stop-loss order immediately. We are freezing our commitment. We are also joining Harborline in the demand for a special liquidation audit. We are done here." "No," Gavin shouted. "You can't do that if you pull out. The leverage collapses. We will lose the assets." "You already lost them," Todd Miller said. Gavin spun around to face his partner. "Todd, what are you saying? Tell them we are solid." Todd stood up. He picked up his laptop. He looked at Gavin with a mixture of pity and disgust. "I sent the file to the regulator an hour ago." "Gavin," Todd said quietly, "I am not going to prison for your deck. I have resigned as of this morning." That was the death blow. The room erupted. Investors were shouting, pulling out their phones, calling their lawyers. The veneer of high standards and exclusive circles dissolved instantly, replaced by the ugly, frantic reality of financial ruin. Gavin stood in the center of the storm, looking wild-eyed. He looked for a lifeline. He looked for a shield. He saw Lauren standing near the door. She had come to support him, to play the role of the dutiful wife one last time. "Lauren," Gavin yelled, pointing at me. Tell them your sister is crazy. Tell them she is doing this out of spite because of the party. Tell them—" The room quieted slightly, watching the domestic drama spill into the boardroom. Lauren looked at Gavin. She looked at the slide on the screen, the photo of the deck she had stood on. The deck she had thought was paid for by success, not theft. She looked at me, standing calm and resolute in my suit. "She isn't crazy, Gavin," Lauren said. Her voice was steady, clearer than I had heard it in years. "She is trying to ruin us," Gavin shrieked. "She is jealous." "She is honest," Lauren said. "And you are just a liar." Lauren turned around and walked out the door. Gavin watched her go. He slumped against the table, the fight draining out of him. He looked at the investors, but they were already filing out, ignoring him, treating him like a contagion. The fund was dead. The reputation was dead. The Standard was gone. I unplugged my USB drive. The screen went black. I walked past Gavin. I didn't stop. I didn't gloat. I didn't say "I told you so." The numbers had said it for me. I walked out of the conference room and into the lobby. The air felt cleaner out here. 2 days later, on Sunday morning, the morning that was supposed to be the brunch I was invited to as a consolation prize, my doorbell rang. I opened it. My father was standing there. He wasn't wearing his windbreaker. He was wearing a shirt and tie, as if he were coming to a job interview. He held a small gift bag in his hand. "May I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked into my apartment. He looked around, really looked around, at the books, the art, the quiet, disciplined life I had built. He didn't look for flaws this time. He looked for me. He set the bag on the table. "I went to the house," he said. "Gavin is bad. Alice, the lawyers are talking about seizing assets. They might lose the lake house. They might lose everything." "I know," I said. I read the filing. "He blames you," Dad said. "He says you are the devil." "And what do you say?" I asked. He looked at me. "I said you were the only one who told the truth." He pushed the bag toward me. "I found this in the attic. I was looking for, I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe I was looking for where I went wrong." I opened the bag. Inside was a framed photograph. It was the picture of me at the science fair, the one with the blue ribbon. The glass was cracked in the corner, but the image was clear. "I used to keep that on my desk at the insurance office," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For years, I was so proud of you that day. You explained photosynthesis to the judges better than the high school kids." He paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Somewhere along the way," he whispered, "I started listening to the wrong people. I started thinking that pride came from expensive cars and country clubs. I forgot that pride comes from character. I forgot how to be proud just because you are you." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I want to learn again, Alice, if you will let me." I looked at the photo. I looked at the man who had uninvited me from his birthday because I wasn't standard enough. He was broken, yes, but he was also finally, truly here. "First Sunday of the month," I said. "That is the deal." "First Sunday," he agreed. "Lunch, no Gavin, no money talk." "Just us," I said. He nodded. "Just us." I walked him to the door. We didn't hug. It was too soon for that, but we shook hands, and his grip was firm. It was a start. As he left, my phone buzzed. It was a final text from Gavin. He must have unblocked me, or borrowed a phone. "Gavin, I hope you are happy. You proved your point. You destroyed the Standard. Are you satisfied?" I looked at the message. I thought about the slide. I thought about the investors who wouldn't lose their life savings because I had stopped the bleeding. I thought about my father, walking down the hall, learning to be a parent again. I didn't reply to him. I didn't need to. But I spoke the answer aloud to the empty hallway. A final closing statement for the case. "You wanted high standards, Gavin," I said. "Well, here it is. The truth is, the only standard that matters." I closed the door. I locked it. And then, for the first time in a week, I sat down and enjoyed the silence. It didn't cost a thing, but it was the most valuable thing I owned. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I really hope you enjoyed seeing justice served as cold as ice. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Drop a comment down below and let me know which country or city you are representing. It is always amazing to see our community growing all over the world. Please do not forget to subscribe to Leona Revenge Stories, smash that like button, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people who need a little satisfaction in their day. See you in the next one.